Now, it's been a while since I was flying a super capital, but there are some new things that I have to check out. Now, the supercarriers have received a new hangar mode, a new hangar module or rig, and we have also received a new implant that I will be checking out today. I think the new implant is called Tactical Defense. Yeah, there it is, Tactical Defense, and well, it will be fun to check out how this works. Does seem to be interesting, and we will see how much hit points I will get from the implant. Now, it's still not activated since I want to kind of show the before and after I installed the implant, and I'll be flying the Wyvern today. Initially I planned to use the Eon as well, but I will save up that for a different video. I had some issues with some of the modules for the Eon, so maybe it's bugged, maybe I messed something up, but in any case, let me quickly assemble this ship. So the Wyvern is one of the tankiest, if not the tankiest ship in the game. If you build this thing properly, it can tank a lot of DPS. It has 4 rig slots for combats, and now it seems like it has 5 engineering rig slots. 1 slot is specified for the hangar mode, for the hangar modification, which is a new thing that's been added in one of the last big updates. It should also improve the overall shield volume, and I believe that there is a good chance that we are about to see maybe a 50% buff to the total shield volume on the Wyvern, and I believe the same thing can be done on the other supercarriers. We will check that out as well in a different video. So, the way how I would fit this thing is obviously full tank. I have seen way too many glass supercarriers, and most of the properly tanked supercarriers are still flying around. I don't think that I've seen a properly fitted supercarrier destroyed yet. Most, like 9% of the losses, are all glass builds, which is kinda funny since one of these monsters can definitely tank a crazy amount of damage if you have the right build for it. And when it comes to the fighters, I'll be using the classic heavy fighters, the prototype heavy fighters. After all, we all know that the fighter drone type weapons have been changed. They did get a rename, maybe they'll get a rename at one point again. But now the Tech 9, the Tier 9 fighters drones are called prototype drones, and in theory I think Alpha Clone should technically be able to operate fighters now, since the tech level restriction has been completely removed on the drone weapons. However, I haven't tried that out yet. I mean, if you can technically use them as an Alpha Clone, you can't use a supercarrier as an Alpha Clone, so there is definitely something funny going on there with that. But all the things that I will have to test out, just out of pure curiosity. Now, on the blow slot modules, you have different ways to build this thing. If you want a full-on chunk brick tank to be used against capitals specifically, you don't really need to have any fighter damage mod or similar. You can just go with a full tank build. The Supercarrier core module replaces about 3 capacitor batteries, since the cover module is using fuel to give you shield, armor, and I think also repairs hull. And the cover module also recovers your capacitor, which is honestly one of the, I would say, one of the best modules in the game at the moment, and it's crucial for supercarriers. Now, there is that new hangar slot. And that moment, when I was recording, I completely forgot that the hangar mode was added, so Let me quickly spawn the hangar mods and then I will be installing it onto the ship. But the hangar is right over here. Heavy fighter siege modification, that's the new module that you can use on this ship. And it does have some very interesting stats. Gives armor, gives shield, and gives hull, as well as some other bonuses to heavy fighters. Overall, honestly, very interesting thing. So in order to install the module, you have to remove all the modules equipped on the ship, and now it's equipped. And the effect kicked in, which means now the ship did receive a slight boost in overall hull, armor, shield, and the fighters have also received a bonus as well. Now the Wyvern has a bonus on the Guardian Disruptor, well, the area effect weapon that disrupts missile launchers, so that's the first module. The second one is the defense disruptor, basically does reduce the resistance on the ships, and honestly this is a very nice combination for the Wyvern. And I have to put the fighters again. The most annoying part about any carrier, about any drone based ship, lightweight based ship, is the fact that you have to spend so much time loading in the fighters. It used to be a lot worse though, I'll say that. It used to be much slower, so I have to give the developers a little bit of credit there, because this used to be a much more painful process. It's still painful, but less. It's still painful, but you know, I can tolerate it. But you definitely do not want to do this while in combat, since it can actually, you can waste a lot of time just swapping the fighters, swapping the drones. And even the faster option that you also can use sometimes is pretty unreliable, so I still prefer this way of loading fighters from the fitting window, since it doesn't glitch out, it doesn't bug out. So that's just how I. And 51,000 DPS, which is about the same. What's actually slightly higher DPS. Actually, used to be 45, 49, 47,000. Now it's 51. So that's, I guess, decent enough. And I also assembled the previous build. So this is kind of a active tank, but at the same time, you can actually focus the Wyvern to be a full-on passive tank. Very, very hard to break passive tanks, since these things do have a very nice recharge, very nice passive recharge. So you can technically just go all in for resistance and extenders, and this thing will be very, very difficult to shoot down. You can actually get about 22 million hit points on the shield. I have about 8.8 million, which is mostly because of my current rigs, and I have also no nanocore. When you basically max out this thing, you can really get about 20-25 million hit points with about 95 average percent resistance. And yeah, with a very quick recharge, this thing is kind of very hard to kill, very hard to shoot down. So this is one of those ships that, if I ever fly, it will be a super tank. Although I don't really think I'll fly a super capital ever, so... But if I do, I know how to build it, and it will be nearly immortal. This will definitely not go down easily. Just no way, it's impossible. It's mathematically impossible to shoot this thing down without Concord support in less than 10 seconds. Only Concord can kill this very easily. Even Concord might actually have problems if I have 4 Capsuleers to support, which is kind of funny. I actually have to try that out at one point. Let's take a look at the active stats of this thing. I love the command bursts on these ships, they're so useful. And we have 145 million hit points, 93, 95, 95 and 94%. This is without the damage control active. With the damage control active, well, with the current damage control, it's not meant to give any bonus on shield and armor. But on whole, the Energizer is just a panic button. But with the classic damage control, yeah, we're looking at 99% resistance easily. So yeah, definitely a tanky boat. Definitely a tanky ship. And there is the Supercarrier recover module, which is, as I mentioned before, if you have a super capital, do not undock it without the Supercarrier recover module, because that module is
Docking request accepted.
the difference between life and death. That module is so useful and so important. It is a crucial part of a supercarrier. Now, you might be wondering, what am I going to do with this ship next? Well, no, as I mentioned before, this was the ordinary build that I usually use. Probably the build that I would use on this ship myself, since you are capacitor stable with one capacitor battery and with the cover module active. As long as you have fuel, you will have repairs. So yeah, it's very useful. And now it will be time to play around with the new implant here. So let me activate the implant, and now we will see actually the difference between the implant being active and inactive. Now this is a passive implant. Its effect will always be there, which means that you can use this implant alongside other implants. The good thing is that this implant doesn't increase your damage. It just increases your defense, and a lot of players have been worried that this is the developer's response to what they have been saying, that this is the module, or should I say the buff, the so-called buff, to increase the defense on all ships. Well, I'm actually happy to say that that's not the case. There will be actual other defense upgrades that are going to be completely separate from the implant. So don't worry, this is just an implant that focuses on defense, but this is not the solution to the problem that the developer said. So there's going to be more updates that will focus on the overall ship defense that are not a implant, of course. And here you can take a look at the stats. Overall, the things that this implant does is actually quite interesting, I would say. You do get some E-war resistance, you do get some weapon resistance against certain weapon types. In some cases you actually do get a bonus, which I don't think we have seen so far, but you can actually get a bonus that will increase the chance of your enemy's weapons hitting you, which does in the end reduce the damage that you will take. So technically this implant does cover all weapon types, from lasers, decomposers, even decomposers. It's kind of interesting, but it covers decomposers, lasers, drones, blasters, and missiles, which is overall interesting. And you can change the secondary attributes depending on what defense you want or what defense you need, which I guess can be very useful. And there is definitely a difference between this implant being active and inactive. It is definitely strong. I might get the implant myself, however I don't really need that, but I think this is going to be quite funny to use with the navy ships. And this does give you like a 30% extra shield armor and hull volume, so technically can be very beneficial when it comes to the passive recharge on passive tanks. Can also work really well for passive tanking in general. This technically help with active tanking, but from what I've seen here, the current stats are kind of more focused on the passive aspect, which I guess it's fine, and passive tanks might get the highest bonus out of this, but we will see. I'll do a lot of tests with this implant as time goes on. And as you can see, the implant is active alongside the aerospace tactic implant. It's passive, it's a passive implant, always active. So it's interesting, definitely interesting. And yeah, 49 million hit points, 10 million in shield. So we already see a increase in the total shield volume of the Wyvern. Let's undock and let's see what the active stats look now. Oh, it's a bonus of 30%. So we can all do the math and we can all get to the number, but it's one thing to just do the math, one thing to actually see it with our own eyes. So let's see it with our own eyes, which is what I think is the most important thing here. Okay, every module is active, the cover module is on the cooldown. You can actually, I mean, I love this module, really. The cover module is so useful, and I wouldn't be flying a super capital without that. It's literally the difference between life and death. 160, 188 million hit points, 93, 95, 95, and 94%. So there is definitely a difference in the total hit point value. The main difference is definitely in the extra shield volume there. And of course there is also armor volume increase as well, so it's not only shield that's giving the number here, but you know, since this is a shield tank, I'm focusing on the shield of this thing, so definitely decent shield increase there. Now, that was a build with more of an active type build, what I would usually run. It's very similar to the build that I had on the Revelation. It is the Revelation build, but transformed to be a shield tank. Now, let's do a full-on resistance build with only adaptives, damage roll, and extenders. Now this can actually work really well for this thing, since it has a lot of passive recharge and it has a lot of shield now. We have 67 million hit points and 14 million in shield. With the correct rig setup, I'm fairly sure I can double that. To about 28, maybe even 30 million shield hit points, and that would be kind of wild, but I think I can do that. We'll definitely try it out. And let's unlock to see the hit points now. Now, the passive tank on a super capital, I guess some of them can do it. This is definitely going to work really well if you are in a big fleet with a lot of force auxiliaries. I mean, if this thing gets focused with these stats, and if you have Logis, you will have a very fun day for sure, because you will be able to tank 14 million hit points. Is just wild, and it's about to be more. 14.9, almost 15 million hit points. Okay, not bad. And 93, 96, 96, and 95% resistance. This is, of course, without the damage control being active. Now, the Energizer is useful, but I believe that the classic damage control can actually be more useful on this thing, since you can use it actively. And maybe, I mean, it depends really. Both modules are very good. I wish you could fit both of them at the same time. Unfortunately, you can't. You can only fit one. But yeah, the damage control can actually be more useful than the Energizer. You can actually use the damage control more actively in active combat. So I guess depends really on the situation. If you want to use the Energizer, you're free to use the Energizer. If you want to use the classic control, you can use the classic damage control. I guess both work in the end. But let's just, for the lulz and giggles, let's take a look at the active damage control stats. Now again, the classic damage control can be used to absorb a huge amount of incoming damage. And the damage control, 189,000. Okay, that's actually a little bit better. What was I about to say? Let's actually first look at the... Oh, Jesus Christ, 1 billion. There we go. 1 billion hit points. Lovely. The damage control actually saved my ships in so many occasions, and I would say the damage control became a necessity nowadays. It really makes a huge difference if you have a damage control, and it became very useful for all ships. Doesn't matter if a glass DPS or if a tank, a damage control is useful, and it makes a huge difference in combat.
Docking request accepted.
But yeah, 1 billion hit points. There we go. I'm fairly sure I can get more. I'm definitely fairly sure I can get more, but I really need to make a video where I just do something very stupid, where I specifically build a ship for a specific purpose. So at the moment, I'm very confident I can get about 30 million shield hit points on this thing with a different rig setup. So that's one of my next goals. I mean, I already get like 14 million with little effort for the Wyvern. Fairly sure I can get more. Fairly sure I can get more than that while retaining the same resistance. Maybe even improve the resistance a little bit. So yeah, this thing is absolutely wild from both ends. And of course, the Wyvern isn't really known for the DPS. It's obviously more known for the tank. It's a super capital designed to be used as a tank. Now I have changed my build a little bit. This is if you want a little bit of extra DPS and fighter velocity, although usually you will be fighting big ships with this thing, so fighter speed might not be that important, but you know, always nice to have extra speed. So this is one of the ways how I might even build my own Wyvern. 61,000 hit points, 168 million hit points, and yeah, some decent resistance, a little bit lower but still pretty good, all over 90%, so absolutely no complaints from me. And let's go and take this thing for a little ride, because why not? Let's have fun with the super capital. Since we're already flying it, might as well take this thing for a spin and, you know, blow up some ships, I guess.
Autopilot
My favorite
engaged.
super capital, well, I already said this before, but I like tank. If I were to buy a super capital, it would probably be a Wyvern or a Eon. I think an Eon might actually be the better option for me, since I already have a thermocirculation implant that gives extra armor resistance. So the Eon definitely is a good chance that if I ever fly one, it's going to be the Eon or the Wyvern. The big difference between the Eon and the Wyvern is the way how they tank. I would say the shield super capitals
Warp drive
seem to
active.
work better, but take what I just said with a grain of salt, because it's not really directly comparable. I can't just say this is better than the other, because both have advantage and disadvantage. The big advantage with the shield is the passive recharge. You can just passively tank ships without much of a problem. But armor, on the other hand, is very tough, and I think the Eon has a lot more armor than the Wyvern has shield. I might actually get 20 million hit points on the Eon quite easily. But the armor is almost invincible, nearly invincible, when it comes to a proper armor fleet. A Eon in a proper armor fleet has 99% average resistance. Maybe more, maybe it does hit 99.9, which is around 100%. So a properly tanked Eon is definitely nearly immortal in a proper fleet, while the shield can definitely work if you're Sol. Well, let's say both work if you're Sol, but I feel like shield would give better results because of the crazy passive shield recharge that you have on this thing. So in the end, you can pick the super capital that I guess works the best for you. Which one would you use? I leave that up to personal player preference. Same thing how I actually choose my ships. I test them all out, see what I like the most, see what I actually feel the most comfortable in, and that's usually what I end up flying. At the moment, in my current situation, I think the Wyvern would be the better option, since I'm mostly alone or with a friend or two. However, the Eon would definitely be a very good choice if you are in a smaller fleet, smaller corp, where you have a decent armor fleet. I know a lot of players who are part of a armor fleet. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to fly in a armor fleet myself. Maybe that will never happen at this moment. I don't know. I mean, I'm usually flying with a friend or two at most. Rarely in any larger fleet nowadays.
Enemy ships detected.
I mean,
We're
that's
under
just
attack.
where I am at the moment, and I think that's going to stay the same way
Attack.
for a very long time. Maybe it changes down the road, but I highly doubt that. I don't really think that I will be. I mean, it's just the way it is at
We're
the moment.
being
There
warp
is
scrambled.
not much I can do about that anymore. Now, one thing that I noticed, the heavy fighters used to. I feel like they used to do a lot more damage to smaller ships. I think I actually have to go back and check it out again, the older videos for the Wyvern. I feel like I really feel like the heavy fighters used to do a lot more damage to smaller ships, and there is a good chance that they might have been nerfed, because I know the damage replication. I mean, it's actually a good thing that the heavy fighters are unable to apply full damage to smaller ships anymore, because they're technically designed to fight big ships, capitals, while the light fighters and air superiority fighters are kind of designed to deal with the smaller ships. So if you do fight this thing, I definitely recommend that you have a lot of air superiority fighters and a lot of normal light fighters, since you might actually struggle to hit smaller ships with this thing. So while heavy fighters will give you the best DPS, the best application is going to come from the air superiority and the light fighters. And you definitely need to have those in the Supercarrier as well. You never know when you have to use them. So most of the super capitals that I've seen that have been destroyed did not have any light fighters. They only had large fighters, and they were unable to apply any damage to the fleet that has engaged them. So definitely make sure that you have every single type of the fighter possible on your ship. After all, they are like, how much these things cost? I think they cost like 1.5 trillion ISK at the moment, which is very expensive. So if you already have such an expensive ship, you might as well want to make sure that this thing has protection from all sides. So make sure that you have all the weapons that you have, make sure that you have that are required, and make sure that you have all the modules necessary. It's not shameful to actually go with the expensive build on these things. It costs a lot, might as well spend a lot of ISK to make this thing as immortal as possible. You do not want to lose it, that's for sure, because that loss will be following you throughout the game. Big losses like a Supercarrier stays. So my personal advice would be to treat the ship like you would treat a Ferrari or something, because that's basically how much, you know, it costs compared to some other ships in the game. It's definitely expensive, so if it's expensive, might as well make sure that it lasts. And if it happens that you get caught with a good build, you will give a very, very good fight, and it's definitely going to be remembered as a tough ship to destroy. But so far, a very interesting choice from the last couple updates when it comes to the new modules. So definitely interesting to see how things are progressing. And we know Titans are also right around the corner. The anniversary is like in 2 months from now, and I think it's nearly 100% already confirmed that Titans are coming on the 13th of August or around that week, on the anniversary of the game basically. So it will be fun to test those monsters out. I cannot wait to do a Titan versus Titan Doomsday showdown. That's gonna be fun. I'm very curious to see how will they implement the Doomsdays on these things. Hopefully they have the AoE Doomsday that basically works everything in a 200-kilometer circle that actually used to crash the servers in Evil Line. I'm very curious to see if the same thing happens in this game when you fight Doomsday. And also, your fighters will not engage while your ship is preparing to warp. That's also one new thing that I noticed. But with that being said, that would be it for today. It was a very interesting little test, and honestly, very interesting change to the game that's been made so far. But with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.